Did you know that in 2023, Canadians spent $600 million in the box office alone? That's a lot of money, guys. So obviously, if Canada is willing to spend $600 million at the box office watching films, that means films are pretty influential. Not a surprise to anybody, but today I'm going to be talking about traditional fictional heroes and modern anti-heroes and where we're going as a society. So, first, I'm going to define a hero. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a hero is a person who shows great courage or a person who is admired for their achievements and noble qualities. Traditionally, heroes see flaws in themselves and they desire to overcome those flaws so they can better face evil and overcome their own demons. We see this with characters such as Spider-Man. Spider-Man, created in the 60s, in his first film debut that was well known, was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the early 2000s. In Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, the first film, there's an arc he goes through where he gets his ability and has superhuman strength, able to climb walls and shoot webs, and he uses them for selfish gain.
He signs up for a wrestling tournament, aiming to get $3,000. Spider-Man wins the cage fight in 2 minutes, but because he won this in under 3 minutes, the stingy owner says, "Hey, I'm only going to give you $100. Following this, Peter Parker finds his uncle dying in the street from a bullet wound, and he thinks that this occurred due to the man who had robbed the wrestling joint. So he goes after him in revenge. Throughout the movie, Peter Parker realizes that what his uncle said is true. With great power comes great responsibility, and he cannot wield his newfound powers selfishly.
We also see other heroes, such as Captain America. Captain America is kind of a unique hero. Captain America is nearly morally perfect from his first debut in Captain America, the First Avenger. He starts out being a courageous man despite his lack of strength. He is willing to leap on a grenade to protect his fellow soldiers when tested during training. It turns out to be a false grenade. And when asked by the man who recruited him for the Super Soldier program, "Do you want to kill Nazis?" And Captain America responds, "I don't want to kill anyone. I just don't like bullies, no matter where they're from," proving that his motives are rooted in good rather than in hate. Captain America also sticks to his gut. He honors his conscience despite situations. In Captain America, the Winter Soldier, he sees that S.H.I.E.L.D. is corrupt from the inside.
These new long-range precision guns can eliminate 1,000 hostiles a minute. The satellites can read a terrorist's DNA before he steps outside his spider hole. We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
We can't afford to wait that long.
Who's we?
After New York, I convinced the World Security Council we needed a quantum surge in threat analysis. For once, we're way ahead of the curve.
By holding a gun to everyone on Earth and calling it protection.
You know, I read those SSR files. Greatest Generation? You guys did some nasty stuff.
Yeah. We compromised, sometimes in ways that made us not sleep so well. But we did it so that people could be free. This isn't freedom. This is fear.
S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. Let's get near past time for you to get with that program, Cap.
Don't hold your breath.
And then he realizes that S.H.I.E.L.D. is compromised by Hydra, so he doesn't stick with the institution, he will fight the flaws in the institution. Then, in the next film, Captain America Civil War, we see that Captain America is willing to stick to his moral code despite pressure from others, not conceding to peer pressure. He believes in the film that despite the Avengers' flaws and mistakes that they make on the job, it's an unfortunate part of their job. Control is best had within their own hands rather than that of the United Nations. Some of the other Avengers disagree, and many are fence-sitters in this conflict. Iron Man is emotionally moved in this film because of a specific situation where he realized that Wanda had accidentally killed this woman he meets' son. So he thinks that the Avengers should be kept in check by an outside source. Captain America is concerned about that, rightly so, coming out of Winter Soldier, when the last time an institution was telling him what to do, that institution was flawed. S.H.I.E.L.D. And on the inside, had secret evil motives. So he wasn't about to sign up for that again. And this is what leads to the conflict. Captain America also proves himself in Infinity War. Despite the massive force against him of Thanos coming after the Avengers to receive the last stone that he needs for his gauntlet, he is willing to stand up to Thanos alone, grabbing his gauntlet. He couldn't do much to fight against him, but he was willing to. More impressively, in Endgame, he was willing to stand up against Thanos and his army on his own. As he said in Captain America Winter Soldier,
The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not.
being willing to do the right thing despite being the only person who is doing it is a hard choice to make, an aspirational one. And when we think of traditional heroes, we should aspire to be like people like Captain America and Spider-Man, becoming less selfish and more selfless, using our abilities for the greater good. Another character similar to Captain America would be Aslan from the Narnia series. Aslan is a picture of Jesus written by the Anglican C.S. Lewis. He uses Aslan as the creator in The Magician's Nephew, and this character is also high in courage, loving, nurturing, caring of other people, and is willing to give up his life self-sacrificially on the stone table in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. These are both characters that we can look to who are either morally perfect or nearly morally perfect. Most heroes in fiction are not nearly morally perfect or morally perfect, but they're still aspirational, like Spider-Man, a more common traditional heroic type. And the issue is today we're seeing an uptick in the popularity of anti-heroes. Anti-heroes aren't new. They've always existed, because man is fallen and sinful, and we all realize that there's flaws in humanity, no matter what worldview we're of. An anti-hero is a protagonist or notable figure conspicuously lacking in heroic qualities. Anti-heroes are typically motivated by selfish ambition, and they happen to do virtue rather than doing virtue out of their good morals. Anti-heroes are perhaps realistic, being that man is fallen and sinful. We have all fallen short of the glory of God. I'm not saying that anti-heroes are altogether bad, just there's a popularity in the anti-hero archetype that is kind of concerning. Specifically, in an article on The Brink called The Allure of the Anti-Hero, Mina Say Vogel, a psychological researcher on the effects of mass media, says, so, if you had a really bad day and did something you weren't proud of, a viewer could watch Dexter, for example, and say, at least I'm not as bad as Dexter. For context, Dexter is a show about a cop who moonlights as a serial killer, taking out those he believes to be worse morally off than himself. The concern with this is that many people in modern society are looking to anti-heroes and saying, at least I'm not that bad, rather than doing what we traditionally did, which was look to heroes that are better than us and saying, I aspire to be that good. And she agrees. Farther, she says, morally ambiguous characters, she says, can actually make people feel better about their actions in the real world. New York Post did a survey in conjunction with Butterfinger of 2011 people, and of that 2011 people, 51% of them said that they, when watching a film or series, root for the villain. And 60% of those people said that they watch a series or film solely because of the villain. Why are we rooting for evil rather than good? The Bible says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. I think that the fact that we're looking to anti-heroes and justifying our own moral actions in the real world is an indicator of society's degenerate decline, unfortunately. There's two types of anti-heroes, however. Not all anti-heroes are bad and worth throwing out. I think that there's redeemed anti-heroes and unredeemed anti-heroes. A redeemed anti-hero, for example, would be my next character of discussion, Indiana Jones. And if you've watched this channel, you know I love Indiana Jones. Go back and watch the video where I get dragged down the street. It's pretty entertaining. So, Indiana Jones has an arc through his films that I briefly talk about in my other video. And the reason it's important to know what order the films take place in is because of this arc. So, despite Raiders of the Lost Ark coming out first, then Temple of Doom, then Last Crusade, Temple of Doom takes place 1 year before Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the reason this is important is because if you watch the Temple of Doom, Indy says that his motivation in getting the Sankara Stone is
fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
he desires money and fame out of it, and he desires to sell it to a museum to get that money and fame. Later, by the end of the film, he uncovers a cult where children are tortured and forced into slavery. Then he frees all of these children selflessly, proving that he has moved from selfish motive to selfless motive. And throughout the Indiana Jones films, he continues on this moral uptick in his motivation. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, his motivation is altruism. He's asked by the United States government to find the Ark of the Covenant for their sake. So, he fights for his country, and he doesn't want the Ark to get into the Nazis' hand. Then finally, in The Last Crusade, Indy isn't looking for an adventure. He just gets roped into one because his dad gets taken captive. So, he goes to find his dad, reunite with him, and then gets tempted to get to the Holy Grail, but gives that temptation up, realizing it's not for the better. So we see that a redeemed anti-hero goes from being an anti-hero, which is a flawed character that sometimes does good, to being a hero who is motivated by good. These are the type of anti-heroes we should have more of. An unredeemed anti-hero, however, would be someone like Deadpool or Harley Quinn. Deadpool is a selfish, morally lacking, vulgar bisexual. He embodies a lot of the negative characteristics of our modern society. He's not a role model, he's not someone to look up to, yet he's a wildly popular anti-hero. This is the concern. We also see films like Birds of Prey, which is the film that Harley Quinn gets her sole role in. This film is where she and some of her friends gather into a group called the Birds of Prey, and they do what's right in their own eyes. Just as in the Old Testament it says in the book of Judges, everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And this is what's being portrayed on the big screen, and people are looking to these characters in the upcoming generations, and these role models are not good. This is a concern that I have. Lately, in film, we have been seeing villains becoming more complex. This is not a bad thing, it's a realistic thing. Villains, according to Merriam-Webster's definition, is a deliberate scoundrel or criminal, or the one who opposes the hero. A really complicated, nuanced hero would be Thanos. Thanos thinks that the world is overpopulated, and he has an idea of how to solve it, a concerning idea. Snapping away half of the universe, killing them all off so that there's more resources for them. There are many who think like this in the modern day, and it was concerning to see after Infinity War came out, all of the comments on social media saying, maybe Thanos is the good guy. And obviously not. We don't think that the immoral means justify the ends. At least we shouldn't. I think it's valuable to have heroes that have layers and complexity to their thinking, rather than being like some old school heroes where they just do bad because they do, and they're pretty two-dimensional. Understanding how people can become twisted in their thinking and arrive at immoral ends is a valuable thing to look at. They are called cautionary tales. An example of this in the modern day would be The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the prequel to the original 4 Hunger Games movies. This film depicts President Snow when he's young and his moral decline throughout the film. The book, it's a little bit different than the film. In the book, he kind of starts out being a little morally tainted and shows it over time. Rather, in the movie, he chooses to make steps that compromise his morals over time. At first, he just defends himself.
I don't want to hurt you!
But he over-defends himself and ends up murdering this person. From this point, he murders someone that he's newly met because he's concerned that he's going to be ratted out to the government. Then he's willing to rat out his close friend because what he was doing was illegal, even though what he was doing was right. So we saw that he slowly degenerated until he became the villain. Who would go on to be the villain in the original Hunger Games series. These stories are valuable and have existed since the beginning of time. These stories are cautionary tales showing how one becomes morally corrupt and what we can do to avoid it. We should not compromise our morals, because if we compromise our morals, we can go down a dangerous, slippery slope. Here's what I'm saying, and here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that we should throw out all anti-heroes and avoid all films that have them. What I am saying is we should use critical thinking skills, analyze the films that we watch rather than sitting as voyeurs, letting the film industry mindlessly penetrate into us. We should be wise and discerning at what content we allow into our head. With films that don't always have perfect morality depicted to us, we should take in the value and reject the filth. And perhaps some films are better left unseen. Thanks for listening. If you have any comments on anything else that you think I should talk about, let me know. See you next time.